Hey everyone, so in today's video I'll be talking about how to use Facebook APIs. So there are different APIs for querying a particular user's information, and there are APIs for posting something on a user's wall. And there are some other set of APIs as well. If you want to explore what all APIs Facebook has exposed, you can go to the Facebook website, Facebook developers website, which is already opened here. As you can see in the docs section, you can go through all the APIs which Facebook has exposed, and we can also use it while developing our application. So in this video I'll mainly talk about how we can start using Facebook API. I'll use a very simple Facebook endpoint to fetch access of a particular user. So let's start. Now the thing with Facebook API is, for making any API call you will need access token. I mean, if you are making any HTTP call to any of the endpoint, you will need access token, and different endpoints require different access tokens. So this is the endpoint that I want to call, and I want to get the response, get a successful response of this particular endpoint. Basically what this endpoint will do, this endpoint will fetch the name and the ID of a particular user, Facebook user. So in order to call this particular endpoint, we need this access token. Now, how can we generate this access token? So in this video, I'll mainly show you how we can generate an access token. So whenever you're using any of the Facebook APIs, you will need to first register a client app on Facebook website, Facebook developers website. Whenever if somebody is using Facebook API, Facebook wants to know which client is calling a particular endpoint, and if there is some security issues with that particular client, Facebook can directly take action against that client. So let me just go to Facebook developers website and let me just create a client first. So this is Facebook developers website. I have already logged in. Now I'll directly go to my app section. Here I'll create an app. I'll click on create app. I've already created one app, but I will create the app from beginning and I'll show you how to do it step by step. So in this particular page, I just have to select the type of my app. So for now, let me just select it as a consumer app. Click on next. Then I'll have to provide a name of my app, client app. Let's say my client app name is my app 2. I'll click on create app. So it needs my account credentials through which I have logged into Facebook developers website. So let me just put it. After putting my credentials, so my app, my app 2 got created. So here you can see the name of my client app which I have just created. Now once it is created, what I want to do, I want to add Facebook login to my app, because whenever some user clicks on my app or my website, and whenever some user wants to authenticate through Facebook, I will have my endpoint, my this particular client, my app to client endpoint for authentication through Facebook. So let me just add Facebook login to my this particular created client app. I'll click on setup. Let's say I'm going to integrate my client in my web application. So I'll click on web. Since we are registering or adding Facebook login authentication, Facebook wants to know some details about my portal that I'm going to create and where I'm going to use Facebook authentication. For now, I'm not creating any website as of now. So let me just put a dummy URL. So in this particular case, let me just put the URL of Geeks for Geeks. This is actually not my website. I'm just putting it for demonstration purpose. Then I'll click on save. If you are creating your own website, you should provide your own website's URL in this particular text box. I'll click on save. Now what I'll do, I'll click on continue. If you are actually creating your own website, this is the code through which you can integrate Facebook login in your application's code as well. So you will have to copy all this code and put it in your application code. But right now I'm not creating my website or my app, so I'll simply click next. Again I'll click next, and I'm done. Okay, so as you can see that Facebook login has been integrated on our website, which in this case is a dummy website. Now let me just go to the settings. Let me just click on basic. Okay, so these are some of the details about the client app, my app 2 client, which I have just created. So while calling Facebook APIs, I will need these details. So let me just copy it. I mean, I have already copied it, but I'm just showing you that these details will be needed. So this is my app ID. Let me just copy it again and let me just store it. So this is my app ID. This is my app secret. While actually getting the access token, I will need to call the API through the OAuth API through my client app ID and app secret. So I also need my app secret. So let me just copy the app secret as well. These are the two information that I needed to call a Facebook API. Now let me just go to the advanced section. In this particular advanced section, once the authentication is done, once the user is successfully authenticated through Facebook, I will have to provide a redirect URL on which my user is going to be redirected. So I'll scroll down and there is a redirect URL section. So that particular section is actually here. I mean, when I click on this particular Facebook login, I'll click on settings. So I clicked on Facebook login, and in settings, there is a section where I have to provide the redirect URL. So this is my redirect URL section. So here I'll have to provide the redirect URL. If you are developing your website or an app, you will have to provide your actual URL. But right now I'm not creating my own app or website, so I'll provide a URL, a dummy URL. So right now I'm just using the URL of Geeks for Geeks. So I'll simply provide Geeks for Geeks URL. So what this will do, once the Facebook user is authenticated, he will be redirected to this particular website. That's the only thing that you will have to provide. Now I'll click on Save Changes. So all this is done. Now what will happen, whenever a client comes to my website and a client wants to authenticate through Facebook, so from my application or from my website, I will have to hit an endpoint. So this is the authorization endpoint. What this endpoint will do, it will actually authorize my client app to call any Facebook APIs on that particular user's behalf, whoever is authorizing my client. So this is the endpoint. In this particular endpoint, I'll have to provide my client ID, which I have already copied. I'll also have to provide my redirect URL. I mean, once the authorization is done, where my client app is going to be redirected, and I'll also have to put a state. So let me just copy and put all these details in this particular endpoint. So I'll put my client ID. Okay, again, I mean, in my redirect URI, I'm actually, because I'm not creating my own website, I'm putting the URI of Geeks for Geek. Now this URI is actually URL encoded. I've already encoded it, but if you want to encode, there are some online portal. For example, there is this portal, urlencoder.org. You can directly Google search and you can directly encode it. So as you can see, I've already inserted in this particular text box the URL and I clicked on encode. So this is my UTF-8 encoded URL. So the same URL is there also. So I'll simply copy it, I'll paste it in the redirect. I mean, it's already there. Now in the state param 1 2 3 4 5, this is the, I mean, this is a dummy param. This is a dummy value that I've inserted as of now. Now let's just call this particular API. Let's just hit this API. So there are multiple ways of hitting the API. For now, it is actually you will actually have to make a get API call. So I'll directly use my browser to make that particular call. I'll paste here and I'll hit enter. You can also make this API call through Postman, or there is a Facebook API Explorer tool as well. So this is the URL of API Explorer. From here also you can hit that particular URL. So for now I'm just hitting that from my browser itself. So as you can see, once we hit that particular URL, this page got opened. So what this page is saying is, my app 2, which is the client app which I have just created, is requesting access to my name and my profile picture. So as it clearly says, that it is actually asking my user that if my user should authenticate or authorize this client app to make any Facebook API call on my behalf. So if I want to give access, so basically I'm giving access to this particular client app to call Facebook APIs on my behalf. If I do not give the access, the client app will not be able to access Facebook APIs. So I'll just click on continue, and also in this particular page you can see that this app will only be able to have access to my name and profile picture. I mean, right now we are just giving these two access, other accesses are still locked. Now I'll click as continue as Rishabh. Now here in the address bar you can see that there is one code param which we have got in response. So you just have to copy this particular code param. So I'll just copy it till here and I'll paste it. After hitting that URL, I got one code. So this code, it will be used to get the access token. So I've just copied that code. Now once we have got the code, there is a access token endpoint that we will have to call to get the access token for this particular user for calling Facebook API. Now this is the URL, this is the endpoint for getting the access token. So as you can see in the endpoint, we will have to provide the client ID, we will have to provide the redirect URL, we will have to provide secret, and we will have to also provide the code that we have got in the previous step. So let me just copy paste everything. First I'll copy the app ID, I'll copy the app secret. The redirect URL will be same, and I'll also copy the code which we have just got. Okay, so our URL is done. Now let me just hit copy this URL and I'll again make a GET request from my browser directly. So once we will make this GET request, let me just close it. We don't need it now. Now we will make that GET request through that OAuth endpoint. So I'll just paste it here and I'll click enter. You can see that in the response we have got one access token. Now this is the access token that you can use to make API call to make Facebook API call. So I'll again copy this particular access token, and there are some other params as well, like token type and the expiry time when this access token is going to be expired. Now I'll simply paste the access token here. So finally we have got our access token. Now it's time to hit Facebook API. So this was our API which we wanted to hit, but we didn't have access token, but now we have access token. So let me just put our access token in this particular endpoint. Okay, so I have pasted it. Now I will directly copy it and I'll again put it here and press enter. So as you can see that the access token which we have provided in our endpoint has actually got expired. So we got this response that an active access token must be used in this particular while calling this API. So why we got this response? Because there are some delay. The expiry time was very less and we took some time to copy paste and create our endpoint. So I'll again follow the same step to get our access token. So I created a new access token using the steps that I have explained earlier, and again this is the endpoint that I created. The endpoint is same. I replaced the old access token with the new one, and I hit the API through my browser. So this is the response that we got. So in response we got the user ID and the user name through on whose behalf we are actually calling the Facebook API. So this is a successful response which we got after hitting the Facebook API. So that's all about this video. I hope you understood how you can use Facebook API in your application. So all the endpoints which I have shown you in this particular video are also present on Facebook portal. Let me just show you. So this is the link on which you will get all the details whichever I have explained in this video. All the information is present in this particular link. I will provide this link in my description section. You can go through it and check it out on your own if you want to use it. Okay, so if you scroll down the link, this particular link, you can see that this is the authorization endpoint. This is the same endpoint that we used to get the code to authorize our user through Facebook. So this is the first endpoint that I have hit. Again, if you scroll down, if I scroll down, you can see once we hit the authorization endpoint, we will get a code, and once we get the code, so this is the endpoint to get the OAuth access token. So this is the OAuth access token endpoint. So in this particular endpoint, you can see that you need to provide the client ID, redirect URL, secret, and code which you have got from the previous API call. So this is the second endpoint which I used, and once you call this particular API, you will get the access token, and after getting the access token you can call Facebook API, whichever you want to call. So everything is provided in this particular link, so you can go through the link and you can use it as per your need. So that's it about this video. I will provide all these useful links in my video's description. Thank you.